See the plaque that's erected outside on the thing. We're also going to make, this is going to be very short now because time is of the essence according to Morris here. So we'll do the Abbey of the Field and the thatched chapel very, very quickly. In the 12th century, new religious orders began coming into Ireland from the continent of Europe. Now, it's debatable. You can say Donald Moore O'Brien, or we can call him Brian O'Brien. So I'm going to say the King of Munster at this time helped establish what became known as the Abbey of the Field, Monastery Abbeyfeale, and this was in 1188. It housed a Cistercian order of monks, founded originally by St. Bernard at Clairvaux, Switzerland, and later introduced into Ireland by St. Malachy of Armagh, and they were known locally as the White Monks. 21 years later, the abbey seems to have lost some of its importance, becoming a cell to Monastery on Éanach near Croon, County Limerick. Now, from then on, it's very vague, so we're jumping 4 centuries. 4 centuries later, during the period of the Desmond Rebellion, Billy already spoke about it, Sir William Pelham, who headed a Tudor army, camped near Portcastle as they marched through Munster, killing and laying waste all before them in an effort to capture Geroid, the then Earl of Desmond. They eventually ran him to ground at Glenaginty, near Newcastle, or near Castle Island, before he died. Where he died, sorry. After leaving the area around Portcastle, Pelham attacked the Abbey of the Field, which was cited here, sacked the monastery, and the monks fled. The year was 1580. Now, 79, we'll say 80 years. It's easy to remember a round figure. The census of 1659 shows that only 39 persons lived in and around the ruins of the abbey here. 39 people. Now, in the census, Port registered 13 people. Bullock Drumtrasna, 38. Cahir, 18. Kilconley, 10. Knockbrack, 30. So the total population of the parish of Abbeyfeale was 148 persons. So the 39 that we mentioned here formed the nucleus of Abbeyfeale town. Now, that was the end of the abbey. So now we talk about the thatched chapel. And the plaque outside states, it gives you a little bit of history, and I'm not going to add to it that much. But at a date unknown, probably early 1700s, a parish church was built on the same site here, with the stones from the old abbey. It had a thatched roof and was a much smaller edifice. It was known as the Thatched Chapel and was in use until St. Mary's Church was built during the years of the Great Famine, 1845 to 47. And that plaque outside tells us, it records that the poverty that prevailed in this area was absolutely dire. An emergency meeting took place on the 21st of June, 1840. Now this was 5 years before the famine, we know. 5 years before the famine, and it states that 100 families comprising 600 people were in a state of destitution. So it was really, really bad here in this area. And we have more evidence, because I have the minutes of a meeting held in March 1848, that's what, a year after. And I'll be as brief as I possibly can. I won't quote it all. A public meeting was held in Abbeyfeale for the purpose of taking into consideration the destitute state of the poor of the district. Have I much time, Morris? I can mention it.
We're all day.
Okay. So just because I think it's a very, very important piece of thing. This meeting anyway took place. Mr. Patrick Hayes, and that's interesting to know the names of the people that actually were here at the time. So Mr. Patrick Hayes, I think we'll talk about him some other time. At this meeting, it was proposed by Mr. John Cray Hartnett, seconded by Reverend Timothy Hartnett, P.P. Duwa, that the Reverend Daniel Lyddy, P.P. Abbeyfeale, act as secretary to this meeting. Also attending was Mr. Oliver Fitzmaurice Duwa, the brother of George, and I'm sure some of you would remember Ollie. I can remember him. I'm old though. Anyway, Oliver Fitzmaurice, and this was proposed, the proposal was made by James H. Dalton. He seconded the proposal, and I'm quoting now, that this meeting views with the deepest alarm and concern the destitute condition of the poorer orders of this district, the labourers and some of the farmers, many of whom are at the present moment without any subsistence or employment or the means or opportunity of procuring either one or the other. Mr. John Hartnett proposed and Mr. Morris H. Collins seconded, quoting, that the state of the potato crop in this district at the commencement gave every hope of subsistence and support for the spring and summer months. Yet we have ascertained with the deepest dismay that within the last 2 months the disease has made frightful ravages and is every day increasing. Now you'll be under the impression that the famine was gone by, without any prospect of being arrested. Instances have come before us, founded on personal observation, where poor families 2 months ago, after having made up their potato crop with care, found a few days later that they had not 1 bushel in 20 fit for use. What weight was a bushel? You know, I don't know. I meant to look that up. What was the weight, Billy?
I don't know exactly.
I used to know one.
Anyway, they resolved.
We knew a lot of things one time.
We had to learn them one time.
We did.
Resolved that we solicit the government to devise means of employment. Now the employment was so important, and it gave people a bit of dignity as well, I suppose. That we solicit the government to devise means of employment for the famishing poor of the district for the ensuing 4 months only, God help us. The magistrates and cesspayers in consequence recommended the building of a bridge across the Abbeyfeale, the field at Abbeyfeale, connecting the 2 counties, Limerick and Kerry. The magistrates' recommendation added that the list handed in of the awful number of 30 persons who met their death by drowning in that part of the river Field must bring to every humane mind a melancholy evidence of the sad necessity for this bridge. On the proposal of Mr. David Leahy, seconded by Mr. William Hartnett, it was decided to forward a memorial embodying the resolutions and recommendations to the Lord Lieutenant, and that was taken from an extract of the Limerick Chronicle of 1848. Of Reverend Dr. Lyddy, or Daniel Lyddy, parish priest. It is said that the pennies of the poor helped to build it. St. Mary's was built on the site where the Boys' National School now stands. And St. Mary's was known as the Famine Church. It was an historic gem. It was the very heartbeat of our town for 120 years. It was regrettably demolished in 1969. Its loss is still mourned by the older folk and of town and parish. In my youth, it was always referred to as the chapel. We're going to the chapel. We never said church. Church was kind of very sophisticated.
Kind of a Protestant sound in the church.
Church, maybe, yeah, probably, yeah.
Chapel was Catholic.
So the church, and then we always called New Street, or Church Street, it was Chapel Street.
Chapel Street.
And Chapel Lane.
Chapel Lane, yeah.
Because, and I think of my lane, I always think of a lovely country lane, but that's what it was. That was country there, country even up outside of this little new piece of the small village town. And that's all I had to say, but if anybody wants to have a quick